Friends, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Sasha and I work together twice a week on my YouTube channel. Sasha, the most important question, what happens now?
A strike on Moscow. In the coming days, Moscow is getting ready. It's not for nothing that Moscow City is being evacuated. Everyone is being sent to work remotely. It's not for nothing that official Z-bloggers, war correspondents, even the authorities, the military and generals have started saying that yes, there will be a combined missile and drone strike directly on Moscow. In other words, they are preparing for retaliation, for a harsh response. We discussed with you just this week that a harsh response is expected any day now. I said before, wait 10 days, there will be a response. Well, here you go. I gave it 10 days, and as you can see, I was right. I assessed the situation a bit more accurately than maybe even Donald Trump. That's just a joke, of course. The point is, there will be a response, there will be a harsh strike. Moscow is preparing for this. Most likely, for the first time, Moscow will be set ablaze. All those Patricks, all of Rubliovka will burn. They don't feel the war there, you see? Many people here ask me, but they're hitting Kiev, right? Very often, representatives of the Russian political emigration ask me this question. They're hitting Kiev, but Kiev keeps working, standing, living, and so on. I say yes, but Kiev feels that the war has long since come to the Ukrainian capital. But Moscow doesn't feel that yet. No, they're going to feel it 100%. Everyone will feel it. Dmitry Medvedev, who, after getting drunk, started talking about how Trump is just decorative with his statements. The only one who's decorative is Dmitry Anatolievich Medvedev, in terms of height, in terms of mental and intellectual abilities, and in how he managed to drink away his power in a single night. He's decorative in his cowardice, too. And especially in how much he's sucking up to Putin now, afraid he'll get taken out. A tweet here, a tweet there. You see what I mean? One moment he criticizes Trump, the next he praises him. It all depends on Vladimir Putin's mood. This is a man who drank away his power in a single night and handed it over to Putin and Patrushev by the lake, all because he was afraid they'd drown him. In just one night. And now he's talking about being decorative. There is no one more decorative in the Russian power structure than Dmitry Medvedev. You can just remember this for the rest of your life, carve it in stone for yourself, wherever you like. That's the first thing. Second, of course, what they're moving to remote work now isn't just, military enterprises, but Moscow City, an elite complex with office spaces where Viktor Yanukovych's son has offices, where Kurchenko has offices, where a huge number of Russian security officials, FSB agents, have offices, and where Bashar Assad and his family have an apartment. This suggests that, most likely, they are going to shoot things down, they want to shoot things down, and they don't care where they do it. It's obvious that their goal is to prevent drones from hitting the Kremlin or any other important military targets, military facilities, like the general staff on Frunzenskaya near Arbat. Well, it's actually right on Arbat. So what we've been talking about and predicting with you, Dasha, over the past weeks, if not months, is starting to come true. Many people probably thought we were crazy, that we were making things up. No. Well, here you go. Now drones and missiles will be flying. It's not just Daria and I saying this. They're saying this over there, in Russia. Gerasimov is saying it. The whole Z propaganda pack is announcing it. Everyone, absolutely everyone. Go ahead. Moscow will say whatever Trump says. Why aren't you striking Moscow? You said it right in the preview. Why aren't you striking Moscow? There's no weaponry. Give us weapons and we'll strike. All right. But then don't just strike Moscow. Hit St. Petersburg too. In other words, the Americans are raising the stakes. It's just that Putin went all in, and Trump thought, well, fine, but I've got more trump cards. My last name literally means trump card. So let me play my own hand. And he did. Now he's already considering giving Ukraine Tomahawks. And that's the weapon that pierced through 2 nuclear facilities in Iran. Tomahawks, 30 Tomahawks. And there are no longer 2 nuclear plants in Iran. So why do we think there couldn't be several nuclear plants on Russian territory destroyed after a Tomahawk strike? That's JASSM. Air-to-air missiles and ballistic missiles will be sent here to Ukraine. And we're saying that most likely Donald Trump gave a signal, quite a public one, straightforward, showing everything, demonstrating it all to Vladimir Putin. Catastrophic strikes on Moscow will follow. And now there will be combined strikes, drones, missiles. They'll simply turn off the lights over Moscow, and they'll turn off the lights over Russia too. And the lights will go out over Vladimir Putin's regime as well. It's long overdue. And if even Trump is asking, so why aren't you striking? That means an idea has formed in his mind, most likely a 100% idea. Why not do something to make things unpleasant for Vladimir Putin? Surely that's what they're counting on. So I expect a major fire in the center of Moscow in the near future. Everything will burn, absolutely everything. And that's already inevitable. They brought this disaster into their own home when they started the war. They brought this disaster into their own home when they chose Vladimir Putin once again, when they helped him dismantle the constitution, when they helped him orchestrate Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin, Trostianets, Mariupol, and the rest. They are the ones to blame for this. They brought this nightmare upon themselves. Now it won't just be hellish sanctions, now it will be hell on earth. Trump promised hell on earth for Iran. But as it turned out, hell on earth came to Vladimir Putin.
Friends, write in the comments what you think about the potential transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. That really would be a decisive game changer. Write what you think about the JASSMs and about the phone call, the conversation between Zelensky and Trump, when basically Trump asked, why aren't you striking Moscow? President Zelensky said, we have nothing to strike with, and now Trump is giving them something to strike with. Sash, let me add a bit of a fly in the ointment to our barrel of honey.
Yes.
Many military analysts immediately wrote that Trump simply allowed Putin to seize the entire Donbas to continue his military actions, his offensive, expansionist terrorist operation, and only after that would he introduce any measures. In other words, there was some kind of agreement between Trump and Putin. You take what you need and then we'll impose sanctions. What do you say to that?
Dasha, you see, that's not how it works. If there had been a backroom deal between Trump and Putin, the NATO Secretary General wouldn't have been in Washington. There wouldn't have been any negotiations between the Europeans and Trump. None of this would have happened, and no one would have given anything to Ukraine. The backroom deal is formed in a completely different way. First, the shipment of weapons has to arrive. Let me remind you that Trump gave Iran 60 days. On the 61st day, the Israelis launched a strike. But in order to carry out that strike, everything had to be in place, including the arrival of American carrier groups, American fighter jets, American reconnaissance planes, and American intelligence data. And intelligence had to work and figure out who was where, how they were positioned, and in which bunker Ayatollah Khomeini was hiding. It's the same situation here. Stockpile weapons, accumulate systems, acquire anti-missile systems, and then carry out retaliatory strikes in response to what Vladimir Putin does. Yes, of course, Putin will strike. Obviously, he will try to advance in Donbas. These things are even obvious. But in 3.5 years of war, Putin has not been able to seize Donbas. And in fact, since 2014, he hasn't been able to take Donbas. That's the first point. Second, obviously, it's necessary to reach an agreement with the Indians, with India and with China, because right now, Trump is negotiating with both the Indians and the Chinese. And these negotiations are about tariffs. And here, the issue is trade. Lavrov came to Beijing after visiting North Korea, as you know. Right now, Lavrov is in Beijing, and he's negotiating with Xi Jinping. And the Chinese side said they would support Russia even more. Well, fine, they'll support them more, but they'll get sanctions for it. But we're not talking about sanctions against Russia. We're talking about secondary sanctions, sanctions against China, against India, against the purchasing countries, against companies and legal entities that buy oil, gas, nuclear materials, electricity, coal from Russia, and so on down the list. That's what we're talking about. Secondary sanctions, targeting the purchasing countries, the countries that allow the Russian oil fleet to sell everything under the sun and to roam freely, that even allow certain financial transactions to go through and let goods pass through their territories. Turkey, for example, Azerbaijan, Central Asia, China as well, and so on down the list. That's what we're talking about. Some countries of the European community. That's what we're talking about. So which side are they officially ultimately taking? So that everyone understands the game being played. And thirdly, listen, in September, the official procedure for adopting the federal state budget begins. It's necessary to understand whether Vladimir Putin will take any action or not. What appropriations, what funds to allocate, what to allocate them for, and how much to allocate to Ukraine for direct opposition to Putin. What will Putin do? It's necessary to assess the behavior of the Kremlin dictator, the Russian troops, and so on right now. What will happen next? Once they assess the situation, they'll strike. There's simply no other way out of this situation. Vladimir Putin himself overturned the board. I think he deeply regrets it now. He's biting his nails, his elbows, and everything else he can. But the problem is, Dasha, that he's the one to blame for this whole story. He overdid it. He ruined everything, as the New York Times rightly put it. Now, Putin is facing very difficult, catastrophic times. There's another reason too, Dasha. Putin started purging his elite at the wrong time. He killed the Minister of Transport, Starovoyt, and went after the Kemezov clan, his recent friend. He started cracking down once again on the Shoigu and Patrushev clans and so on. He started going after them again. And these repressive measures are gaining more and more momentum. He started destroying his elite at the wrong time, because right now the elite should be united. And when half of the elite fears for their lives, when ministers, 9 people, vote with their feet, Vice premiers, ministers, and top officials vote with their feet and come to Starovoyt's funeral, while Putin mocks them, first saying that a wreath was sent, then taking his words back. And they realize that, well, all right, now Lubyanka will come after their asses too. In other words, we're talking about Trump putting on pressure, Russia's economic problems, a mess, and at the same time, possibly the beginning of some kind of coup. Because the oligarchs who are feeding these ministers, the officials, and the military leadership all understand perfectly well that Putin started the fight, that Putin struck first against them. If they don't respond, they're finished. Now Trump will apply pressure, and they will too, and they'll try to destabilize the situation. I don't know, Dasha, whether we'll wake up tomorrow or the day after to the news that tanks have entered Moscow, surrounded the Kremlin, and Putin is gone. A coup in Russia. Hooray. I don't know. But the fact is, they will act and watch how hard Trump goes after Putin, and they'll base their actions on that. This is probably one of the most turbulent periods of this war, the tension of this war. It won't be easy, it will be turbulent, and at times it will be tough. But for Putin, in the end, the day will end badly. These are fateful days for the war for Ukraine, yes. But these are dark and grim days for Vladimir Putin. Trump has no other way. To use Margarita Simonian's words, he can't back down. He simply can't anymore. And Putin will choke on him. And it's Vladimir Putin's fault. He himself is entirely to blame for what has unfortunately happened.
Sasha, are Tomahawk cruise missiles a tangible reality in the coming months? Or is their widespread deployment still largely unrealistic?
This is Trump raising the stakes. This is Putin's blackmail.
Yes.
Trump showed him several times what the Tomahawk system is, what Tomahawk missiles are. He demonstrated this once in Syria, when he destroyed, completely obliterated, the Syrian bases where Russian military and Russian aircraft were stationed. He showed what American weapons are capable of with the example of the Wagner mercenaries, whom he wiped out as well. He demonstrated what Tomahawks are with the example of Iran. And now he says, that's it. I'm going to send Tomahawks to both Zelensky and Ukraine. Hundreds of them. Take your pick. In other words, he is raising the Yes, he is raising the stakes, but he doesn't want the war to truly turn into a global, large-scale one. He doesn't want to fight Putin directly, but he probably has to do it or will have to do it. But for now, he's raising the stakes as high as possible, to the limit. Trump has a higher ceiling of possibilities. He has a broader range of maneuver, you see? He's showing Putin, I can even give them Tomahawks, and you have nothing. You have nothing to counter these Tomahawks with. The Patriots are mine. Those are my Patriots. The best anti-missiles are mine, and you don't have them. If there has already been a strike on Siberia and Siberia was burning, I don't know, for the second or third time in the past month even, you see, before, Russian territory was considered an asset, a vast territory. You could hardly make it all the way through, right? You'd make it to the Urals, and then somewhere out there you'd just give up, turn around, and head back home. Now, Russia's vast territory is actually a disadvantage for it. It's a negative factor because it's impossible to cover it with anti-drone systems, with anti-missile systems. You see, it's impossible. That's why they'll cover Putin's back again, somewhere near the Kremlin. And all of Moscow will be burning. They'll cover St. Petersburg, but Siberia will be burning. You understand? So Tomahawks are a real possibility in the future. And when Putin says no, and most likely he will say no, he has no other option left. He can't show any weakness. He can't let his security forces, on whom he depends, and on whose support his entire power rests, see that. That guy's I chickened out, I can't do it. He will go all the way. He will keep making mistake after mistake, but Trump will keep pushing further and further, along with the Europeans and everyone else. Ultimately, we will reach a situation where China will have to get directly involved. We'll get directly and immediately involved. And we are already approaching this situation.
Everyone is already reporting that things are heating up in Sevastopol. Russian public pages in the occupied Crimea are saying that Trump might strike Sevastopol with replacement Tomahawk missiles called JASSM, and they're also saying that things are on the edge. The latest comments are that Trump is considering supplying Ukraine with Magavka missiles, which could hit Moscow and even St. Petersburg. Panic is starting to spread in Crimea and propagandists are already howling. So this is exactly the zone of tension that is now rapidly developing in Russian military public pages. Tell me.
And notice, Dash, Trump hasn't even supplied anything yet. You see, that's a skill in itself. He hasn't done anything yet. The Moscow Stock Exchange is starting to fall. He hasn't done anything yet, and the public pages are already howling. He hasn't done anything yet, and already half of Moscow is being evacuated in Russia. He hasn't done anything yet, and already problems are starting in Crimea. And there aren't even any Tomahawks yet. And now, attention friends, imagine the situation. There are Tomahawks, and the Tomahawks are being launched. Just multiply all this hysteria by 10 or even 100. Multiply it. They'll go crazy. They aren't even here yet, and they're already starting to talk about how it's all for show. And when they are here, I don't know, they'll just all disappear. As soon as Tomahawks start flying toward Moscow, the first person who won't be in Moscow is Dmitry Anatolyevich Medvedev. He'll fly away. And that's already happened before. You may laugh, but that's how it was. When Prigozhin was marching on Moscow through the Rostov region, who was the first to run away? Everyone stayed. No one understood anything. Everyone stayed at their posts. Everyone was afraid. Who ran away? Putin and Medvedev. Putin and Medvedev. Putin took Medvedev by the hand because the constitution says that in case of anything, Medvedev also gets a life sentence. That he's untouchable, Medvedev. The only president who is untouchable, besides Putin, is Medvedev. He took Medvedev by the hand, like a bride, and flew away with him in an unknown direction to some kind of bunker. And this time, as soon as the Tomahawks start flying and something else hits Moscow or somewhere else, Medvedev will immediately disappear. He'll be gone right away. Because everything about Dmitry Medvedev is just for show.
Sasha, did you notice, how he trolled and mocked? That was said very harshly. Medinsky's Secretary General at the negotiation process says that he doesn't discuss things with Trump. Trump tried to explain, I called Putin. Putin says everything is fine. Then my wife Melania tells me they're bombing Kiev. What's so fine about that? And I believed him, but the Secretary General tells him otherwise. So how can you trust them if they send Medinsky, who was spouting some kind of historical nonsense, pseudo-historical nonsense from Russia?
No, what they said was that Putin sent some crazy historian who was talking about the history of Russia starting from the year 1245. Yeah. As for Trump, obviously, someone once told him about Medinsky, and then he just forgot about him. Medinsky is not someone you need to remember, that's the truth. And Medinsky's books are not the kind of books you need to keep rereading. But it's just that, once again, Trump was shown that Putin sends some random people to negotiations and doesn't take the talk seriously. And what does that tell us? It means that sooner or later, if Putin is told directly, look, if you go to negotiations, no more Medinskys. From now on, only the key figures. People who actually make decisions, and you personally. I won't accept anything else. So now, Dasha, there's no room left for maneuver. You can't send Medinsky anymore. You can't send some random person, someone from some obscure department, or just one of your advisors. Only the highest ranking representatives, and only you personally. Where in the end, your signature is on it, a peace agreement and so on. Because Putin was basically given an ultimatum. Either a peace agreement with Zelensky now within 50 days, or I'll tear you and your regime to pieces. That's all that was conveyed to him. As for Melania Trump, we need to urgently check if she has Ukrainian roots. I feel like this is exactly the kind of person who sits there. I can just picture the scene. I don't know, but I can really picture this scene. Trump comes home, tired after work. He saw football for the first time there. He visited some stadium there. He cut some ribbon there. There, I don't know, he drank some Coca-Cola, pressed the red button, and they brought him a Coke. The man is tired. He comes home to the second floor of the White House. He comes into the house. Melania says, I had a wonderful conversation with Vladimir, with Putin. She says, can you imagine, they hit Kyiv, they hit Vutsk. So I think we finally found the person who really knows the geography of Ukraine well. Who? Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, Melania Trump is the closest friend of Sasha Nikolenko, Miss Ukraine, who is married to, who is the main one. And
at the inauguration.
Yes, and they even lived in the same room during the competition. And if I'm not mistaken, it was actually Melania Trump who introduced Alexander Nikolenko, the Ukrainian Miss Ukraine, to her future husband, who later became her husband and business partner of Donald Trump. As I understand it, if Melania Trump has any affection for Ukraine, it's specifically because of Sasha Nikolenko, since they are friends. And since Melania is European, in principle, she should know European geography because she's not American. This is about how Trump fights against migrants, even though his wife is not American and was born in Europe.
Well, you see, for example, I personally wouldn't draw that connection regarding Sasha Nikolenko. If that's the case, then I want to tell you that Melania Trump and Trump in principle have a daily review of the situation in Ukraine. And that's good. If he has already said this directly to Dasha, it means that this information is reaching him.
And
that's also good. That's good, really.
Of course, we still need to discuss Putin's actions after all of this. So you have absolutely conveyed the meaning regarding Dmitry Medvedev's stage, which ends with, the world shuddered experting in the consequences. Consequences village around Europe was disappointed Russia didn't care, meaning Russia doesn't care. This was stated by Medvedev. But here's the question. What will Putin do if Medvedev says that Russia didn't care, meaning it doesn't care about all of Trump's words and all his threats?
Putin does care. Putin will now try for 50 days to restore contact with Trump. But at the same time, he will strike at Ukraine. These are two things that at first glance seem completely unrelated. But that's how it will be. In the end, nothing will work out for him. Listen, Trump negotiated with the Iranians for 60 days. He negotiated with the Iranians for 60 days. He talked to them, his representatives met with them. The media told everyone that he was really putting pressure on Netanyahu. In the end, it turned out that Mossad carried out 3 brilliant military special operations together with Israel's military intelligence, Aman. Then it turned out that Trump gathered troops and struck Iran. Putin can do whatever he wants to do. But weapons have gone to Ukraine, and missiles will go to Russia, to Moscow first and foremost. What is Vladimir Putin doing today? Now, that's interesting, but we're missing this. So what is Vladimir Putin doing today? Russia launches a drone that first flies into Ukrainian territory. Then it turns into Belarusian territory. It flies over Belarus. Then it comes back. From Belarusian territory, supposedly, as if it's a Belarusian drone, it flies into Ukraine to strike Chernihiv or Kyiv from the north. So obviously, Vladimir Putin wanted to provoke this situation and do everything to sever Lukashenko from the Americans, from Trump, to break that connection. What does Lukashenko do? Attention. Lukashenko sends up a helicopter out of nowhere and destroys the drone on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. What does this tell us? It tells us that Vladimir Putin still wants to involve Lukashenko in this war, to do everything to neutralize Lukashenko, to gain control over Belarus, and to use Belarusian territory to send his army through, to use Belarus as a springboard either against the West or on the Eastern Front, or more precisely in the West, or directly for Putin, or directly against Ukraine, the North. But Dasha, as we're discussing, Vladimir Putin has clearly realized that Lukashenko is backing out, that Lukashenko is trying to distance himself, that Lukashenko doesn't want to be tied together with Putin right now, that Lukashenko has started actively flirting with Trump, and that someone has promised Lukashenko something. And what was promised is very tempting. And Lukashenko doesn't want to lose sight of that tempting offer. He doesn't want to. But Putin really wants Lukashenko to break away from Trump. Did you notice one of the most important pieces of news that came from Trump, aside from the Ukrainian topic, was during his speech in the Oval Office with Mark Ruckton, with the Secretary General of the room? It was stated as follows, that the United States is directly influencing and was the party that initiated the process of reconciliation and the drafting of a peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan. In other words, Trump is taking the Caucasus away from Putin. America is taking the Caucasus away from Putin. So we wondered, why is all this happening? Trump. That's why all this is happening. So, attention, Dasha, Finland, Sweden, NATO bases, Peter is surrounded, troops are practically on the approach. NATO troops to Petersburg. Soon there will be a border breakthrough. At the same time, British and French troops will be in Ukraine, along with troops from 28 other countries. NATO members. After the end, or rather, after the beginning of the ceasefire, the periods of silence. Attention, there will be a Turkish NATO base in Azerbaijan. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Russian base in Gyumri in Armenia disappears. If Armenia closes all Russian bases on its territory. What do I think? I think that Vladimir Putin, who has clearly realized that he won't be able to get Ukraine, no matter how hard he tries, and he wants to prolong the war. But it's one thing when you're playing to exhaust Ukraine's stockpiles and resources, and quite another when you're trying to exhaust America's stockpiles and resources. They are not comparable. You have much fewer resources, and you will lose this war if Trump turns on, and he did. Therefore, he will look for other opportunities for himself. I think there are two options to consider. Three options. First option, this is an attempt to occupy Belarus with a partisan army and destroy Lukashenko's regime and Lukashenko himself. The second is a direct attempt to undermine Armenia, and possibly even an attempt to occupy Armenia. And the third scenario is the start of a campaign, a military campaign against Georgia. I think in the near future we may witness these scenarios. Putin will choose one of these scenarios for himself because the population, the plebs, need to be shown something on TV. And now this is what they will be showing.
Sasha, a little aside about Melania Trump, a whole piece has come out, as they say, we're ahead of the curve. The Times has published a big article Zelensky has gained an unexpected ally in the White House, Melania Trump. According to the publication, she is actively reminding Trump about the victims of Russian strikes. In February 2022, she publicly called the killing of peaceful Ukrainians a terrible, tragic murder of innocent people. While Trump called Putin very smart and a genius, Melania called him a monster. She constantly appealed to her followers, urging them to help Ukraine. She has much more political influence over her husband than was previously thought, noting that despite the presence of numerous security and foreign policy advisors, her voice can be decisive. Trump listens to certain people, especially those close to him, and even more so if their last name is Trump. Sasha, what do you think?
I'll say that we've gained an unexpected ally. No one saw this coming. We've gained an unexpected ally, and that's actually good news, Dasha. You know, it's all actually very nice. Because for a long time, Ukraine was searching for ways, for approaches. How do you convince Trump? And it turned out you don't really need to search that hard. It turned out that there's the first lady who can, bypassing everyone else, just come and say, Donald, it's time to be done with Volodya Putin. Be done with him. I don't like him. And as it turns out, for Trump, that's enough. That's much more than all the negotiations with Putin, more than all the persuasion from the Senate, Congress, and so on. Even more than Elon Musk, who's a bit crazy. It turned out that Melania and Trump are quite enough. That's very good news for Ukraine, Dash. Isn't it? I don't know what will happen next. I don't know what level of influence she'll have, whether she'll continue to support Ukraine or not. But as things stand today, if thanks to Melania and Trump, Ukraine receives deadly missiles, protection, full protection of Ukrainian airspace, 17 Patriots, and even Tomahawk missiles, then a monument should be erected to her in the center of Kiev, and a street should be named after Melania and Trump.
Yes, you're right, Sasha. And most importantly, as you always say, that Putin did certain things with his underwear and slapped Trump across the face. And the Atlantic completely agrees with you, because the Atlantic also wrote about it. And even before the Atlantic, about the reasons for the increased US aid to Ukraine. Putin officially humiliated Trump, just outright humiliated him, and Trump can't get over it. There you go, a public humiliation.
By the way, I think even Melania told Trump about this.
What is this? That he just
is simply humiliating you. And that was the end of it, you see? And then things started moving again. Here we are talking, and things are moving. So what's the conclusion? The movement has started. They wanted action. They can't live without it. Well, here you go. Here's your action. Take it. Sasha, go ahead.
Look, the news is coming in while we're streaming with you. Germany might buy a Typhoon land-based launcher for launching Tomahawk missiles. As I understand it, Tomahawks have become our new buzzword, it seems. Now that's all we talk about.
Dasha, so what does this indicate? It indicates that Trump has broken loose. Now he's going to blackmail Putin every single day. Remember, Solovyov was recently shouting about two Poseidons that would drown America with a nuclear wave. Just a few days ago, Solovyov was shouting about this. America doesn't need any Solovyov. They have Trump. Now, Trump has more different kinds of weapons than Russia does. Now, Trump will tell absolutely everyone in the world every day about the very best, the most powerful weapon systems, and how Russia will burn with the help of these weapon systems. And now imagine 50 days of this targeted informational bombardment of the Kremlin, Medvedev, and all the rest. There's a good chance that even before these 50 days are up, someone in the Kremlin will throw up their hands in surrender. Because, well, they probably can't withstand such an information attack. Honestly, they're more likely to soil themselves.
Sasha, to sum up, what do you think will happen in Europe? Right now, Germany is being called Ukraine's main ally because almost all the supplies will go through Germany. That's very important. And Insect Markluta has also done a lot. Again, Filtsov and Steriki, Orban and others. Now Malta is joining in. Basically, Russian enclaves in Europe. What should we do? And will oil prices finally go down?
Trump will deal with these guys. If Putin actually sees it through to the end, because if anyone has direct influence over Orban and Fico, it's Trump. Moreover, if he turns a blind eye to certain things, the European Union will push through anyway. When Germany stops, for example, supplying cars from Hungary, Orban will raise the white flag and say, I agree to everything. It's happened before. When he was blackmailed with cars, with automobiles, he immediately made all the necessary pro-Ukrainian decisions. Remember that situation when the former German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told him to take a walk in the hallway while the vote was going on. He can go for a walk more than once if needed. I've actually changed a lot in the past few days. The board has been flipped over. We still don't fully understand that this is a new stage of the war. And this stage is clearly not in Vladimir Putin's favor. A lot has changed. The pace is just insane. It's a terrifying pace. There was a similar pace at the start of the big war, at the beginning of the invasion, probably in the first 6 months to a year. What we're seeing now is a new illusion. Everyone was hoping there would be some kind of reconciliation. There was hope. Trump probably had that hope too. Or maybe not hope, but an illusion. He likely had that as well. Or thoughts that he could make a deal with Putin, that there would be a deal, and basically he could even profit from Russia. The deal is over. The illusions are over. And now there's a new momentum. So Trump probably enjoyed the idea of going to war. Trump probably liked the image of Moscow burning. I don't know how long that image will stay in his mind. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 years, I don't know. But that he'll take it out on Putin, that's 100% certain. What will happen in Russia now? Flames. What will happen in America now? The desire to start those flames. What will happen in Europe now? The desire to help start those flames. What will happen in Ukraine now? A new momentum, a new hope that the regime of Vladimir Putin will finally collapse. And I'm incredibly glad about that because I repeat it every single time. Freedom and hope are the last things Vladimir Putin can try to take from us, but he will never succeed.
A wonderful ending, dear audience. Sasha and I are working for you in the Dasha plus Sasha format. Sasha plus Dasha. Twice a week. Write to us if you have any words of support for our tandem. I know you write a lot of different comments. I read them and leave hearts. So thank you very much. Let us know where you're watching from. Where are you watching us from? Every Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, and Monday, we are on my YouTube channel, Dasha Shaslivaya, and on Dmitry Gordon's YouTube channel. Top analyst Alexander Demchenko, thank you very much again. And see you this weekend.
Until next time, bye.